Imagine sailing across the terrifying, uncharted Atlantic Ocean, risking everything to build a new life at the edge of the known world. It is the year 1587. A brave group of 115 men, women, and children land on the wild coast of North America to establish the very first English settlement. They build homes. They plant crops. They even celebrate the birth of the first English child born on American soil, a baby girl named Virginia Dare. Everything seems full of hope. But winter is coming, and the colony runs dangerously low on supplies. The governor, a man named John White, is forced to sail back to England to get help, promising his family he will return as fast as he can. But fate has other plans. Caught in the middle of a massive naval war with the Spanish Armada, John White gets trapped in Europe. It takes him 3 agonizing years to secure a ship and finally make it back to Roanoke Island. In the summer of 1590, his ship drops anchor. White and his heavily armed men row to the shore, expecting to be greeted by cheers, by his daughter, and by his young granddaughter. Instead, they are met with absolute, chilling silence. The colony is entirely gone. This wasn't just an abandoned village. This was a baffling, impossible crime scene. When John White stepped into the settlement, he didn't find a massacre. There were no bodies. There were no unburied skeletons. There was no ash, no burned buildings, no broken weapons in the dirt, and no signs of a desperate, bloody struggle. It was as if over 100 human beings had simply evaporated into the thin coastal air. Even more bizarrely, the heavy wooden houses hadn't been destroyed by an attacking army. They had been carefully taken apart and removed, which meant the colonists didn't flee in a sudden, screaming panic. They packed up their lives deliberately. As White frantically searched the overgrown perimeter for any sign of his family, he found the only piece of evidence left behind. Carved deeply into the wooden post of a ruined fort was a single cryptic word: Croatoan. Before he left, White had instructed the colonists to carve a cross if they were forced to leave in mortal danger. There was no cross, just that one strange, isolated word. For over 400 years, that single carving has haunted the American imagination. The Lost Colony of Roanoke became the ultimate historical nightmare, the oldest cold case in the United States. It sparked endless, terrifying theories. Did a hostile empire slaughter them and hide the evidence? Were they wiped out by a mysterious, ancient disease? Hollywood and pop culture turned Croatoan into a sinister monster, a demonic curse, or a paranormal virus. For centuries, historians dug in the dirt looking for a mass grave. But what if the greatest mystery in American history isn't a ghost story at all? What if they were looking for the dead when they should have been looking at the living? To solve a 400-year-old cold case, you have to start by eliminating the false leads. For centuries, historians and amateur sleuths have tried to pin the disappearance of the Roanoke colonists on a violent, bloody end. The first major suspect was the Spanish Empire. In the late 16th century, England and Spain were locked in a brutal global war. It makes perfect sense that a Spanish galleon sailing up the coast of the New World might have discovered the struggling English outpost and wiped out the heretics. But when modern investigators scoured the incredibly meticulous Spanish imperial archives, they found a completely different story. The Spanish had spies everywhere. They knew Roanoke existed, and they actively sent ships looking for it to destroy it. But the Spanish captains reported back that they couldn't find it. The Spanish never attacked Roanoke. The second and most popular theory is a brutal massacre by local hostile Native American tribes. But the physical evidence at the crime scene completely destroys this idea. A sudden slaughter of 115 people leaves a massive archaeological footprint. You would find fractured bones, skulls, broken iron weapons in the dirt, and a thick layer of ash from burned homes. Modern archaeologists have scanned Roanoke Island with ground-penetrating radar and dug countless trenches. Not a single mass grave has ever been found. Furthermore, you don't carefully dismantle heavy wooden houses, pack up your iron anvils, and take your cannons with you if you are running for your life from a surprise attack. And remember John White's strict instruction. If the colony was under siege, they were ordered to carve a Maltese cross into the wood as a distress signal. There was no cross. They were not in danger. They left on their own terms. So, what about the terrifying message left behind? Pop culture has turned the word Croatoan into a ghost story, a demonic curse, an ancient virus, or a supernatural entity that swallowed the town whole. But to John White, standing in the ruins of his colony in 1590, that word wasn't a mystery at all. It was a forwarding address. Croatoan was the name of a barrier island just 50 miles to the south, known today as Hatteras Island. More importantly, it was the name of the powerful Native American tribe that lived there, and these people were not enemies. The Croatoan tribe were the closest allies the English had in the New World. A prominent native leader named Monteo had even traveled across the ocean to London, met English nobility, and considered the colonists his personal friends. Faced with a freezing winter, severe starvation, and the terrifying realization that the supply ships from England were never coming back, the colonists didn't just sit in the dirt and wait to die. They made a desperate but entirely logical survival decision. They packed up everything they could carry, carved their destination into a wooden post, and walked into the wilderness to ask their friends for help. The mystery of Roanoke isn't a story about how 115 people died. It's a story about what they had to do to survive. And the ultimate proof of their survival has been hiding in plain sight for centuries, locked deep inside human DNA. If the colonists simply moved in with their Native American neighbors to survive the winter, where did they go? The answer has been right in front of us the entire time. For centuries, history books claimed they vanished. But the local tribes of North Carolina have always known the truth. Fast forward a little over 100 years after the colony disappeared. In 1709, an English explorer named John Lawson traveled deep into the Carolina wilderness. When he encountered the Hatteras Indians, the direct descendants of the Croatoan tribe, he recorded something completely impossible. He met Native Americans with striking gray and blue eyes. The elders of the tribe told him ancient oral histories of their ancestors, describing white people who arrived on great ships and knew how to read in books. But the evidence goes much deeper than eye color and old stories. Look at the modern Lumbee tribe and other Native American groups living in the region today. For generations, they have carried incredibly specific family names, surnames like Berry, Cooper, Sampson, and Dare. These aren't just random English names picked out of thin air. They are the exact specific names listed on the official passenger manifest of the vanished 1587 Roanoke colony. Historical anecdotes and matching names are compelling, but they aren't enough to definitively close a 400-year-old cold case. To do that, modern investigators needed a witness that doesn't lie, doesn't forget, and doesn't fade with time. They needed DNA. Enter the Lost Colony DNA project. Using advanced genetic genealogy, scientists began taking DNA samples from the descendants of these local tribes. They were hunting for the specific genetic echoes of those lost English men and women, and the laboratories delivered a massive breakthrough. The genetic results revealed distinct, deep-rooted European DNA markers heavily integrated into the Native American population. The scientific and historical verdict is now clear. When the Roanoke settlers realized they had been abandoned by their empire, when they were starving, freezing, and desperate, they didn't just lay down and die. They adapted. The Croatoan tribe took them in. The English colonists intermarried with the Native Americans. They shared their food, their culture, and eventually their bloodlines. Virginia Dare, the famous first English child born in America, didn't vanish into a supernatural void. She likely grew up, lived, and died as a member of a Native American tribe. The Lost Colony of Roanoke was never actually lost. They weren't massacred, and they weren't cursed by a demon. They just made the ultimate choice for survival. They stopped being English colonists and they became something entirely new. The greatest mystery in American history is finally solved, not by digging up ancient graves, but by reading the living genetic code of their descendants.